In the news tonight, WHO says challenging times ahead. RFMF takes precautions. And patient shares COVID experience.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nunn.
Pulawanaka, Fiji. The world is in a challenging time at the moment, and in the last 7 days, there have been almost 30% increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in the Western Pacific, and Fiji is a part of it. The World Health Organization says they've seen a 10% increase in the number of deaths in the Western Pacific, which is a worrying situation. Fiji has recorded 123 deaths since April, and 51 COVID-19 positive patients died from serious medical conditions. Kritika Kumar reports.
World Health Organization's technical lead says we are moving further away from the end of the pandemic.
And it doesn't end when you get the vaccine. While we know that vaccines are incredibly effective against severe disease and death, we don't have the full picture yet about infection and about transmission. So people who are vaccinated can be infected and they can pass the virus to others.
There has been massive spikes in transmission in island countries that were dependent on tourism.
Part of this is fueled by new variants of concern. I will say again that public health and social measures does not mean lockdown. It's a combination of factors.
Dr. Mike Ryan says the real pathway out of the pandemic is to get vulnerable populations vaccinated, which will reduce the burden on the health systems.
Good news, vaccines are working. They may not be working perfectly, and we have seen cases of people who've been vaccinated who can still be infected and maybe even pass infection on to others. But what is absolutely clear is that double vaccinated people on average have a much less chance of going to hospital or dying.
Dr. Ryan says some governments have to make choices that are not driven by epidemiologic situation as they try to balance social and economic stability. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
The Fiji military is using a number of remote sites to isolate soldiers who test positive for COVID-19. Commander Rear Admiral Viliame Naupoto says various measures are being taken to ensure there is enough manpower to maintain frontline services. The RFMF has one of the highest daily tallies for infections, with 31 new cases confirmed for yesterday. Rear Admiral Naupoto confirms the force training group in Nakasi is being used as an isolation facility, while there are bubbles at the Ratu Sukuna Memorial School and Nambua Secondary School. The Queen Elizabeth Barracks in Nambua is being kept clear of all positive cases.
We are looking at ways on how we can just bring them in and then releasing them again. We're trying to, as much as we can, help in breaking lines of transmission. That is all we're trying to do. But we're so thankful that most, if not all, of our cases are asymptomatic.
Testing positive for COVID-19 has made 29-year-old Neha Kumar rethink and re-evaluate things as she took life for granted. On 28th of June, Kumar went to a doctor thinking she had the common flu as she had a fever, a headache and a sore throat. However, a few days later, she tested positive for the virus. Pranita Prakash reports.
Neha Kumar says processing the news was hard as she was the first one in her family and work circle to test positive for the virus.
A lot of body ache, severe headaches, and then by the fourth day I had lost my sense of smell and taste, and then that had remained, and then on and off from the fourth day, like towards the 14th day, on and off I'd feel extremely tired.
29-year-old Kumar says during the 3-week ordeal, she was scared and didn't want to get hospitalized. She had even stopped following the daily news as the COVID death toll was traumatizing because she kept thinking that she could be the next to add to the statistics. Kumar says she then started developing positive mindset and started paying attention on her recovery.
I took the doctor's advice, took the antibiotics, hydrated a lot, took the Panadol to look after the symptoms. My doctor had advised that I really need to look after my nasal area, ensure I don't cough a lot because the coughing would create pressure on the lungs.
Kumar says she did not develop any breathing issues and therefore was not hospitalized. Kumar, who has fully recovered, is urging every Fijian to get vaccinated and to follow all the safety measures. Pranita Prakash, FBC News.
And to our COVID-19 update for tonight, Fiji's back on four-digit increases, recording 1,054 new infections for the period ending 8 a.m. yesterday. The Health Ministry also recorded 12 new COVID-19 deaths for the period 13th July to 19th July. Fiji has recorded 19,282 cases since April of this year. There are now 14,943 active cases in isolation, with 4,233 recoveries in total. The COVID death toll stands at 125. The vaccination campaign also continues around the country. As of earlier this afternoon, 410,495 people, or 70% of the population, has received their first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. 83,732, or 14.3%, have received the second dose. The five most vaccinated areas include Mba at 100% first jabbed, Rewa and Narongga provinces, Nandi and Naitasiri. Up ahead, budget gets thumbs up. And Muslim community celebrates festival. Welcome back. The drive-through vaccination at the South Seas Club in Lautoka that started today has been positive. Cars were lined up at the Marine Drive as Fijians came in for the first and second doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Head of Vaccination Task Force Dr. Rachel Devi says they were pleased with the response from residents and they expect more Fijians to come forward. Eligible Fijians can get their first and second doses at the South Seas Club. The vaccination drive-through in Lautoka the drive-through vaccination in Lautoka will continue for 2 weeks.
Like just get vaccinated and make people go back to their own lives back there, because it's very hard time for everyone now.
The Fiji Chamber of Commerce believes the 2021-2022 national budget is aimed at assisting every individual who is either directly or indirectly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. President Dr. Nur Bano Ali has welcomed the budget, saying that it's a whole range of positives for businesses. Kritika Kumar reports.
The Fiji Chamber of Commerce president believes the $200 million working capital being provided in the form of loan will help businesses to sustain themselves.
They can access this money and keep themselves sustained until such time as we can get back to normal.
Ali believes this budget is what Fiji needed to avoid what could be our worst economic crisis.
It has assisted the people who need it most, This $200 million facility that's there, for instance, again, come back to that. Once it goes out, then it translates into more revenue.
Economy Minister Yasaid Kiyum had highlighted that businesses will have the freedom to use the assistance where they need it most.
So for the comfort of the financial institutions, government will guarantee 90% of the loan for the micro businesses through the RBF scheme, 85% for the small businesses, 80% for the medium-sized businesses, and 75% for the larger businesses.
The financial institutions can lend funds to businesses at a maximum rate of 3.99% as interest-only loans for the first 2 years. This means for the first 2 years, none of the businesses will pay anything because government will pay all the interest. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
The Fiji Taxi Association is grateful that base fees will now be paid by the government for 1 year. Association Secretary Ashwin Lal says this will benefit thousands of members who are struggling to put food on the table for their families.
For taxis, minibuses.
The announcement on Friday about certain fees that taxi drivers will no longer have to pay for 12 months brought joy to many.
Thanks to our AG, first of all, to bringing such an initiative for the first time for the taxi association, for the taxi operators, as regarding to this in the COVID crisis, for paying the base fees and also the DDC renewal and renewal of license fees.
The Minister for Economy, Ayaset Kayum, while highlighting this, stated that the government has reviewed the current taxi operations framework and will roll out a new system to increase efficiency.
We know many taxis, minibuses, bus companies, they could not drive, they could not get an income. So for them to now operate, they have to incur these daily expenses. All of that will be taken care of by government for the next whole year.
However, cab drivers are not too happy about the open base system.
Only thing the members are upset of the new open base system, and we hope say that the IG will look into it and make some clarification on that.
The Taxi Association says the open base system could potentially cause disputes at various bases. Philip Naikaso, FBC News.
The Fiji Muslim League says followers of Islam must remember the message of sacrifice behind Eid al-Adha. The religious event is being celebrated today, and League President Hafiz Khan says it's an opportunity to think of those who are suffering from the effects of COVID-19. Muslims have been reminded to make necessary sacrifices for the betterment of the nation, especially at a time when all of Fiji is suffering. Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama, in his message, has called on every Fijian to sacrifice in the name of the collective good. Bainimarama says ending this outbreak requires a commitment to one another, a sentiment echoed by religious leaders.
Prayers, etc., that can still be completed by individuals and families at homes. And I think the meaning of sacrifice is really sacrificing things for people who are in need, and that's what we're trying to do.
The ritual commemoration of sacrificing animals on this particular day is actually to atone for our sins and to take care of our poor and needy as a social responsibility.
Coming up in world news, India death toll numbers come out. And later in sports, Olympics gets underway in Tokyo. First up in business, the Asian Development Bank and the Australian government have approved an additional $2.39 million for Fiji and 6 other Pacific countries. The technical assistance will be used to continue public sector management reform in the Pacific as it recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. The ADB says the additional financing from Australia will be used to expand the scope of the assistance to Fiji, where reforms will focus on strengthening public financial management. ADB's additional financing will provide targeted assistance on specialized areas, including economic modeling, revenue diversification, fiscal adjustment plans, and economic recovery roadmaps supporting the country's efforts for economic recovery from COVID-19. The program will run until 2024. The continued support for the sugar industry in the 2021-2022 national budget is appreciated during this difficult time, says the Sugarcane Growers Fund. Chief Executive Raj Sharma says the guaranteed price of $85 per tonne for the 2021 season and this season is also welcoming. He says the subsidy for fertilizer, cane access roads, sugarcane development assistance, weedicide subsidy and the new farmer assistance is also welcomed. Sharma adds they also welcome the $1 million allocation for alternative livelihood of farmers as the world market price for sugar is not good. He adds the fund invites investors, especially those in the micro, small and medium enterprises and even the sugarcane farmers, to see other supportive crops that have markets in Fiji as import substitutes. He also welcomed the allocation of $6.9 million for Committee for Better Utilization of Land and the government's job support program. And here are the local exchange rates as set early this morning. The Fiji dollar had a mixed day on the stock exchange, losing ground against 3 while holding strong against 4. On the commodities market, crude oil continued its drive, this time down to 18 cents to end at $66.67 a barrel. Gold continues with its rise and silver again down to $24.90 an ounce. And time now for Shoran to join us with the latest on the market.
The US dollar climbed to a 3-month peak, riding on the safe haven demands. Investors remained anxious about the highly contagious Delta variant of the coronavirus as lockdown measures continue to drag on Asian currencies. Commodity currencies such as the Aussie and Kiwi dollars struggled. Aussie was also impacted by their morning data release, which showed Australian retail sales fell in June. The retail turnover for last month fell 1.8% from a month earlier, making it the biggest drop this year. With a light data calendar ahead, traders will now be awaiting the European Central Bank meeting tomorrow. A dovish tone is expected after ECB President Christine Lagarde foreshadowed a guidance tweak during an interview last week. The ECB announced a new strategy which allows the banks to tolerate inflation above its 2% target, and Lagarde had said that policy guidance would be revisited to demonstrate the bank's commitment to the new goal. And we will keep you updated on that, but for now, that's all from your HFC Bank. Vinaka.
The COVID-19 pandemic has spawned a vicious cycle of disrupted supply chains, says Prime Minister Voreng Bainimarama. Speaking at the virtual National Food System Summit this morning, Bainimarama says the pandemic has devastated industries, reduced incomes, and has led to higher retail prices. He adds all these have forced families to make trade-offs in both the quantity and quality of their food. Bainimarama says that with COVID-19 now putting food systems under strain as global food supply chains are disrupted, this is the time to grow our way towards a sustainable, healthy food system. He says this can guarantee that our people have enough high-quality food to healthy and fulfilling life.
A resilient agricultural system will be diverse so that we are not overly dependent on only a few crops. And as our agriculture sector grows, we will not be overly dependent on a few economic sectors either. Some growers may find that they can do a lot better growing other more lucrative crops. And we will want to help any farmer who wants to make that change.
Coming up after the break, how a couple is trying to help others. Stay with us. For too many people in Fiji, climate migration is not simply some academic conversation about a futuristic possibility, says the United Nations. UN Resident Coordinator Sanaka Samharasena says he's witnessed firsthand the damage climate-induced disasters can bring, the pain and suffering as well as displacement. He says he's also seen the abiding resilience of families and communities in the face of these vulnerabilities.
In Kandau, some low-lying coastal communities have already been moved to higher ground. I visited one such community last year where they described to me how the rising sea level had swallowed up much of the shoreline and told me how they had to wade through seawater inside their homes during king tides. I heard similar stories when I traveled to an informal settlement on the outskirts of Toka. I visited another community near Bar that had to move in its entirety after a landslide buried a family of 5 during a storm. More than 80 communities have been earmarked by the government across the country for potential relocation, and the number is increasing.
A Queensland couple from Ipswich who saw an unhealthy power struggle in their relationship took steps to fix it, something which can inspire all of us in Fiji. After 13 years together, a wedding and 3 children, building and maintaining a happy relationship is still their priority, and now they're helping others. The Fiji's 7th side may have competed in just one international tournament in the last 17 months, but according to head coach Gareth Baber, that's not an excuse. As Aquila Dama reports, Baber says there's huge pressure, but it's an expected process, and it's been mentioned to him every day for the last 5 years. And the Pacific's fastest man is now living the dream and can't wait to feature in his first Olympic Games. Banuve Tabakaudoro left athletics and pursued a rugby dream for over a year, but now he's just days away from his Olympic debut. Some athletes may have given up hope along the way, but not Tambakau Doro, and he believes Team Fiji now has a much bigger role to play, not only at the Games, but for the country as well.
We're all going through a very tough time right now. Hopefully, Team Fiji can come out here and do their best and put a smile on your faces. So we ask that everybody continue to listen to what the government is saying. Get everybody vaccinated and stuff like that, because we're definitely in this fight together.
The president of Poland's Swimming Federation has apologized after 6 athletes were sent home from the Tokyo Games due to an administrative error. Poland had sent 23 swimmers to Japan, but the PZP was forced to cut the squad down to 17 based on world governing body FINA's qualifying rules. One of the players who stood out for the recent 2 tests against the All Blacks was Johnny Dyer. The Maduata man was interviewed by Nemani Nandolo on the Giant Wingers YouTube channel, where Dyer revealed that we should always be grateful for what we have.
Always been grateful for what you have. Back when it was a mine, it was really hard, but never gave up. Still enjoyed it. So wherever you're at, just enjoy it and keep believing. You'll get there.
It's been a hard time to most of the players, they risk their life to leave their family alone in overseas to come to represent their country.
Most of these players will be available again for the end of the year tour in November. Aquila Vama, FBC Sports.
The United States men's and women's basketball teams have arrived in Tokyo. The teams are looking to maintain one of the most dominant records at the Games. The U.S. have won the men's gold on 15 occasions, including the last 3 games. Their team this year includes stars such as Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. Deepak Chahar and Surya Kumar Yadav slammed their maiden ODI 50s as India registered a series-clinching 3-wicket win over Sri Lanka in the second ODI this morning. Barcelona and Real Madrid legends rolled back the years as they battled this morning. And while Real Madrid won 3-2, it was great to see Ronaldinho scoring this penalty for Barca. This is our play of the day. And that's it for sports tonight. Coming up, we have the very latest in weather. Generally sunny and windy conditions prevailed over most parts today. To the west, mostly sunny and humid. Eastwards from Pacific Harbour to Suva, pleasant with windy and sunny conditions. In the north, sunshine, but the clouds took over by late afternoon. Places we'll be checking out are Suva, Nandi and Lambasa. All centres had high humidity. At sea, moderate to fresh easterly winds, moderate to rough seas. Turning to the tides, the next low tide is at 10:03 p.m. with high tide at 4:22 tomorrow morning. Sunrise is at 6:37. For tomorrow, it will remain generally fine. The outlook for Friday, similar sunny and windy conditions, and the nights will remain cool. To our shot of the day, the moon, beautifully captured by Little Zayan from Nakasi. In Fijian Pulse, we ask, can Fiji Sevens retain its Olympic gold medal next week in Tokyo?
Yes, Fiji can defend the gold title and go Fiji go.
Yes, the boys can do it because it's a good team.
Yes, they can, but we're gonna pray hard to God for them to take the gold medal.
In the world of the weird and maybe not so wonderful, some scientists have warned that your bed is gross. Take a look at why they're saying this. Recapping our main stories, WHO says challenging times ahead. RFMF takes precautions and Olympics gets underway in Japan. For these stories and others, you can tune in daily to our sister station Gold FM. To our poll question, this week we are asking, are you satisfied with the national budget? Visit our FBC News website to take part. And you can send us newsworthy pictures and videos. Email fbcnews@fbc.com.fj or or share it with us via social media. You can also download our FBC app to keep updated with the very latest in news and sports and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanta.